Tonight, the marvelous Russian violinist Dmitry Sitkovetsky, who now lives in London, and his cousin Sasha, a Russian rock guitarist whose band Autograph had the distinction of being the only Soviet group selected to play in Live Aid in 1985.
They wanted to do a South Bank show on me, but they were even more interested to do a South Bank show on both of us, because unlike normal situation, the classical musician usually the one that toes the party line, and the rock musicians are always the rebels. In our case, it was the opposite. My name is Dmitry Sitkovetsky. I'm a violinist and a conductor, and this is Keeping the Flame, a series about the way family, politics, and great art shape a life, but never determine its destiny. And this is the story of my cousin Sasha. I'm the only son of Yulian Sitkovetsky and Belle Davidovich because my father died so young. I was only 3 years old. My mother never had another child, so I didn't have a sibling. So it happened that the younger brother, 2 years younger than my father, VIII Sitkovetsky, also had one son just 6 months after me. He couldn't be more different. If you looked at us, I mean, I was on the, full size. He was always skinny. I was black-haired and he was blonde. So we were like salt and pepper. I mean, very, very different. But we grew up almost like brothers. And naturally, my uncle took such fatherly care of me because I became fatherless. And he always took me on vacations together with Sasha. We used to go in Yurmala summers, in the time when we were growing up, really early teenagers. We would go to dance to disco. Tons of people, younger people, older than us, but we were all looking up in that kind of music. The Stones, Eric Clapton and the Cream, and then later Led Zeppelin, and we knew all of those. And Sasha and I Sasha was supposed to do his homework for the summer, and I was supposed to practice, but instead we played the Beatles songs. He played on the guitar, and I would play the violin. Anything that was not Soviet was always attractive to us. He also started as a musician, as a violinist, but he could not stand practicing, and he was very, very restless kind of a boy. Concentration was not, at that time, was not his forte. So he abandoned violin, but the music genes, of course, were there. And that's when Sasha started his love affair with guitar, which lasted a lifetime. Early 70s was the time when the Soviet rock began. Just when I was entering Moscow Conservatory, at the same time, my cousin Sasha entered Moscow University as a chemist. And 1972, he formed his first band. He became the composer of rock songs and the leader of the first group, which was Leap Summer, and the next group was Autograph. There were already a lot of rock groups being formed, not officially recognized yet, and they were rehearsing in underground, sort of in basements of various colleges. I remember coming to the notorious MGIMO. That was a school of diplomats, and, was not particularly good reputation, but even there, of course, you had to have also good people who would allow you to do it. So there were all kinds of interesting things that one heard about. Oh, did you hear Time Machine there? Or did you hear Aquarium there? Or Skomoroch with Alexander Gradsky. That was another one. That was the beginning of what became an underground rock movement in the late Soviet Union, which I was very much a part of. They were, of course, at first very much influenced by the British and American bands. They wrote songs in English. My participation, obviously, there was no role for violin, and I did not aspire to be their violinist because I was pursuing classical career, of course. It was a different world. But I would go to their rehearsals when I could, and I would go to their concerts. I would come in and help them carry the equipment. There was a great deal always of excitement, a lot of students, a lot of beatniks, whatever, the people who were all hungry for that Western wind. In one of the rehearsals, I met my future friend and collaborator, Andrei Makarevich, who's now, big dissident being in Israel. But before that, Time Machine, Machina Времени was the most famous group. I remember seeing him for the first time, and it was so unusual because we all smoked cigarettes. But this guy sat there with a different kind of look in his eyes, and he smoked a pipe. And he had actually several pipes. And I thought, what is this? I mean, are you showing off? What is this business with smoking pipe you don't even inhale? He said, you don't understand. The pipes, they all have different characters. And he proceeded to describe very poetically about each of the pipe's character. And I thought, oh, that's not an ordinary boy. And I went out and talked to either Sasha or somebody there. I said, that guy is going to be a Russian Bob Dylan. Or maybe I said Paul McCartney. A poet was in the making. So there were interesting personalities there. And I, as Sasha wrote now in his book, it's a long story, that's what it's called, he credits me the name of his first rock group, the Leap Summer. So they asked me, said, Dima, we have this group, it's really good. And I already heard the group, but we can't find a good name for it. I said, when was it formed? Last summer. Yeah, summer 72 was Leap Summer. I said, call it Leap Summer, Високосное лето. And he came with his lead singer, whose name was Toля Anatoly Kelmy. And then the lead singer, since it went well that way, so I was a good name giver, he said, listen, what is the Toля Anatoly for a rock singer? That's a lousy name. Could you come up with a better name? So I said, well, there was Solaris, the great film by Tarkovsky at that time. And Banionis, the main character, his name was Chris, something similar. I said, so you'll be Chris. So Chris Kelmy became an incredibly popular singer, first with my cousin, and then later on, he just died a few years ago, and unfortunately didn't have such a easy time with drugs and alcohol, but he was a big talent. And he was actually, Kelmy he was at least half Estonian. He was blond and very handsome boy. So, I was sort of like a godfather of certain completely non-classical related things. Jealous, I wouldn't say, but it was very attractive. There were always lots of very pretty girls and exotically dressed. It's a different crowd. And there is no question that classical musical audience was much more conservative, much older, and much more serious. So, the whole sort of academic world was juxtaposed to this very, very exciting alternative way of life. But then it started to change. I think from 74, they started writing in Russian. And Sasha happened to be one of the first. His group became distinguished by its very strong instrumental side, because Sasha was not a poet like the other one, Andrei Makarevich. Sasha was a very, very good, probably the best rock guitarist of Russia at that time. And it became part of the establishment. They always disguised that. Rock group was never called rock group, was called вокально-инструментальный ансамбль. vocal instrumental ensemble. An autograph or leap summer doesn't mean anything undermining the regime. Eventually, Sasha became an official artist of Moskoncert, the Moscow Concert Agency, the same organization as my mother was attached to, and all the classical artists, and they started making big tours, also making recordings, and his recordings were ultimately sold millions. So once you become a popular artist, you have to play the rules of the game, even though, of course, initially it was a Western art form. But because of his popularity and my withdrawing from 76 from the public life and very strong single-minded desire to leave the country, was met with great resentment and fear in many ways by both Olga, his wife, and Sasha, because they felt that by immigrating, I would be jeopardizing Sasha's career, because we all had the same last name. I was Sitkovetsky, and so they were. Yeah, I think he was not as informed. I don't think he read as much anti-Soviet literature as I did. He stayed away from politics. They never even said goodbye to me when I was leaving, when I was really in the most vulnerable situation, being an émigré, and people were afraid to come near me. You know, my close relatives ignored me. We were completely estranged. The comeback moment came almost 10 years after we didn't see each other.
From the Soviet Union, we are proud to participate in this worldwide effort to combat hunger in Africa. For us, it is a matter of policy and a matter of human love.
It was a Live Aid, the biggest concert that Bob Geldof arranged. And they had it in two places, in Wembley and Philadelphia. All the greatest stars in the world were there. But they also had, from Moscow, one rock group.
And having said that, let me now present the Top of the Pops autograph.
And that was my cousin's rock group. I was very proud. I mean, he was seen by more people than will ever have seen me in my lifetime and beyond, because the famine in Africa was a theme that was appealing to the whole world. So that was the biggest moment for Sasha. And I called him. I was the one who broke sort of the silence. It was almost 2 years after the Live Aid. So he remembered that in 87, he said, imagine getting a phone call. And that was my cousin, who I had not talked for 10 years. And like nothing happened, said, Sash, I heard you on Live Aid, was fantastic. There's a great book about it with pictures and you in it and CD. And I'm trying to find a way of getting it to you, which I did get. And he still has it in his library. He said, just to describe what it was, for me, it was like a voice that I never expected. The phone rang. Said, yeah, it took me a while to find you. I did not have any contact with them because they were completely on the Soviet side at that point. He was official Soviet rock star with a big career, and in 85, Gorbachev was already coming into power. That was the beginning of what became perestroika. It was not perestroika yet. And of course, they were hoping to make a success in the West. And they got the American manager, and that comes to the time when we finally saw each other in 87, 88 season. And he flew, especially, I think I was playing in Denver with Denver Symphony, and Susan was there as well with me. And Sasha flew in, met my wife, and we had a lot to catch up. Oh, it was very special because, this is something that happened because of the bloody political system. There was never really I mean, we were different people, and now we're especially different. But at that time, maybe it was also partially influence of my uncle, who always wanted to, unify the family. They were also very interested in me helping a young budding violinist, their son, the little Sasha, who I call him, which I did gladly. So there was also an interest, to have that connection. And I was already very well established in the West. There were many sympathetic factors for us to come back. But there was also, in a way, just close relatives coming together without Soviet system being so dangerous. It was crumbling. Of course, we had to be pretty open, and he was never trying to say that it was different than what I saw. It's very simple between those who lived under the Soviet Union to explain the reasons, because, he was worried about his career, he was worried about his family, and he just basically said that I was not brave enough. Soon his family left. And they left, of all places, at the invitation of Menuhin. They came to Menuhin School in London. They left for the West. I started coming back to Russia. The bridges were beginning to be rebuilt. What, of course, united us very much was the commission of the South Bank show. Which commissioned Sasha to write 2 pieces, one just for solo guitar with strings and percussion, and the one for violin solo and guitar, the Tribe Bolero, which is a very, very good song. This is the first time we worked together. We used to play, just for ourselves, the Beatles song, here on guitar, and now we were doing it for the camera. South Bank Show was a wonderful program, documentaries on big personalities in the arts. Among the musicians, they did programs, obviously, on Menuhin, Stravinsky, while he was still alive, and then they picked me, and that was a great honor, and it's still very, very good document of where we were at that time.
Now I see 2 cousins together. Absolutely different style. And face is different. And color is absolutely different. It's very good relationship with 2 cousins.
We were very close for about 15 years after we reconciled, from 87, 88 till about 2002. And then what happened was that he met somebody that he fell in love, and his relationship with his first wife just collapsed. So he left them. It just so happened that I kind of took her side. Then it happened something very dramatic, and my uncle suffered 2 heart attacks. And I didn't know anything about it. He forbade his family and those 2, my cousin Sasha and his wife, to say anything to me. He said, no, don't tell Dima because he has concerts. He should not be disturbed. Me? I would have canceled anything. I would have been on the first plane out to see him. And I was so mad. He said, it's my fault, I forbade him. But I came back and I said, you are adults. You had to tell me. That was a big mistake you made. Since then, I stopped seeing them. And basically, I don't see them ever since then. I'm sorry. That's the kind of guy I am. And that was it. So I don't know whether it's finished or not. I'm sure now that we get old, now we exchange sometimes a little email here and there. And I'm sure if we meet, we could be quite, maybe, I wouldn't say close, but we could find a lot of things and a lot of memories to lean on. I'm grateful that he was my brother that I grew up with. He was not a cousin. We hated the word cousin in English, because in Russia we don't say, we say двоюродный брат, but we still say the word brother. So for us, we grew up like brothers. But even brothers, we're different. We're different now, not because of our common background, but because of the life we've lived after. So much time passed. This podcast was produced by Libo Studio. My name is Dmitry Sitkovetsky. The next episode is about the most important composer in my life, Johann Sebastian Bach. If his greatness is still a mystery to you, don't worry. I'll show you why he is considered a genius. And I'm pretty sure that by the end of this episode, you will have to agree.